This particular example, I want to start by talking about two-dimensional arrays. And we have a two-dimensional array down here, and we can see that we have 3 rows and we have 4 columns. I want to call this particular two-dimensional array board. And I want to go over here and I want to talk about how we might create this particular two-dimensional array. First of all, I want to create 2 single simple variables, and in this particular example I'm just going to use short ints to do that because it takes less memory to do that. So we'll say short int row, and in this particular case we'll set row equal to 0, we'll set column equal to 2, and now how will we go about creating this two-dimensional array? We'll do it by saying something like board sub 3 4. And this is our two-dimensional array now. We have 3 rows, we have 4 columns. This value 3 right here is called the row subscript. Row subscript. And this value right here, 4, is called the column subscript. Now, what might this look like in memory? Well, let's assume that our memory, again, is going to start at location 1000, and we have a short int. And so a short int is going to take up 2 bytes. And so these 2 bytes right here will be taken up by row. These 2 bytes right here will be taken up by the single simple variable column. And then we start taking a look at these bytes right here, and everything from here on out is going to be board. And which cell in board depends on which subscript you're talking about. So in this particular instance, we're talking about row 0, column 0. The next 2, row 0, column 1. Next 2, row 0, column 2. And the next 2, row 0 and column 3. All of these right here are in row 1. And now we come down to the next row, and our next row is going to start out with subscript 1 and then column 0, and you can see this is going to be 1, column 1, and this is just going to repeat, and this is going to be row 2. Now we set row equal to 0, so this places a value 0 in this single simple variable. Column is equal to 2, we place a value 2 there, and we now have all of these undefined values in board. And so before we do anything with board, let's say a few things. One is that we have 3 rows with subscripts that range from 0 to 2. We have 4 columns with subscripts 0 to 3, and this means that we have 3 times 4, or 12 elements in our board. Now, the other thing that I want to point out is you'll notice that each one of these is 2 bytes. And why is that? Well, again, the size of a short int is 2 bytes. Okay, finally, how might we access some members of this particular two-dimensional array? Well, we might say something that looks like this. We might say board bracket 0, 0. We might set that equal to 1. And what that means is we come over here, we find 0, 0, and we place the value of 1 at that location. We could say something like plus plus board 0, 0. Oops, each one of these statements needs to end with a semicolon. And if we said plus plus board 0, 0, we would still go to location 0, 0, take what's there, add 1 to it, and put it back in that same location. So in this case, the value would be 2. We might say something like board bracket row bracket call is equal to board 0, 0. Don't know why we'd want to do that, but we can do that. What's the value of row? Again, there's a variable here. The value is 0. Column is 2, so we find 0, 2, and at that location we put the value of board 0, 0, which is also 2. So at 0, 2, we place the value of 2. This is an element of the two-dimensional array, and this is an element of the two-dimensional array. So this is a quick how we might create a board that has 12 elements. There are 3 rows. You'll notice that the rows always start, the index values always start from 0, and you'll notice they go to the number of rows minus 1, so 0, 1, 2. Number of columns start at 0 and go from 0, 1, 2, 3. And what this looks like in memory, so you'll notice that C++ actually is a language where in memory the two-dimensional array is stored by rows. So this is actually row 1 that goes into memory first, then row 2 goes into memory, then row 3 would actually go into memory. And so that's a quick tutorial on two-dimensional arrays. In the next tutorial we'll do some coding of two-dimensional arrays, and I'll show you what it looks like to write programs with two-dimensional arrays passing in values of the two-dimensional arrays and doing some two-dimensional array manipulation.